Prison food made me feel like an animal. The same way a farmer wants to maintain their animals just to maintain, just so they can yield what they need from the animals, that's how they treated us.
It's not a secret that prison food is gross, but it's more than that. The food served in prisons is making people sick, leaving them with lasting ailments, chipping away at their mental health, hurting their families and friends on the outside, and harming the communities they return to. Simply put, prison food is a public health crisis.
Eating food in prison was pretty degrading. It's like lumpy. It's half the time it gets cold by the time you get it. They'll give you a tray of slop with 2 slices of bread, maybe a fruit or something like that. And sometimes I couldn't eat it. I'd take a bite, have to spit it out.
This is Ayuba Thomas, a formerly incarcerated graduate student at NYU's Gallatin School of Individualized Study. He also does research for NYU's prison education program. Ayuba's experience with prison food reflects what studies show. A typical meal in prison is high in sugar, refined carbs, and salt. Studies have found prison food cooked in kitchens with rats and cockroaches. Some food served is labeled not for human consumption, and 75% of participants in a study about eating behind bars said they'd been served food that was spoiled or rotten. The results of being served such low-quality food are unsurprising. Incarcerated people are 6 times more likely than the general public to become sick from a foodborne illness. Additionally, many folks leave prison with long-term health issues like diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, and anemia. And the consequences aren't just physical.
There are certain nutrients, certain vitamins and minerals that if the diet is lacking in those critical nutrients, B12, other B vitamins, other minerals, that can lead to brain fog, to increased anxiety, to impaired decision-making, to increased hostility and aggression.
This is Leslie Sobel. She manages the Food in Prison project at the National Research Center Impact Justice and is the lead author on a nationwide study of food in prisons. On top of the mental health challenges incarcerated people can face as a result of poor quality food, many people in prison already face additional struggles. 85% of people in prisons struggle with substance use, and many have suffered some kind of trauma, from abuse to neglect. Innutritious, unappetizing, and sometimes inedible food only exacerbates these issues.
Trauma can actually impact the way that we process food in our bodies. Trauma can cause toxic stress, which can actually disrupt the gut-brain circuitry. It can damage your metabolism, and it can lead to different impacts, such as not knowing when you're full and increasing cravings for salty, sugary, fatty foods. Additionally, for the over 80% of people who are incarcerated who struggle with substance use, the typical prison diet can actually increase cravings for unhealthy substances along with salty, sugary, unhealthy foods, rather than helping to disrupt that cycle and help heal the body from use of those substances.
Clearly, prison food is worsening existing health problems and creating new ones.
It seems pretty obvious that if we increased the quality of food, increased the amount of actual nourishment that people were getting, that healthcare costs would go down. Unfortunately, there's not really a lot of data about this, and not a lot of data that's publicly available.
There is, however, ample evidence from outside prison that eating nutrient-rich whole foods saves money on medical treatments.
Even in DOCs that have implemented heart-healthy diets or tried to improve nutrition, a lot of those haven't collected the data around how that has actually impacted healthcare costs.
In addition to there being no obvious financial incentives, there's also no legal motivation. Right now, there is no national law that stipulates what can or can't be served in prisons. Furthermore, prison kitchens in some states aren't even subjected to external health inspections.
Yes, people who commit crimes are there to be punished, but they are there to be rehabilitated. That's the key. Prison food isn't part of the rehabilitation process. It actually sets you up for more roadblocks. You should be able to come home from prison and go run and play with your kids and not have to go to doctor's appointments and take medication because you have diabetes. Punishment should stop somewhere.
The impact of unhealthy, unappetizing, and unsafe food goes beyond prison walls.
When a person is subjected to eat the food in prison, it oftentimes causes a burden on the outside community. Their family has to spend money, drawing money from the household to support this person on the inside.
In addition to the costs family and friends on the outside incur for sending food packages, they also face healthcare expenses when their loved ones are released.
When people leave prison and return back to society, it's often found that they have a lot of ailments and sicknesses that they did not know about.
Furthermore, people leaving prisons are often walking back into households experiencing food insecurity, which is linked to engaging in behaviors that increase the chance of rearrest. In other words, bad food, both in and out of prison, increases the likelihood of recidivism.
The food that's typically served in the prisons in this country basically sends the message to people that they're not worthy of care or that they're less than human. And that message is reflecting the general thoughts in our society that people who are incarcerated, aren't worthy, or that they're inherently bad because they've caused harm. And I think some of it is just really reframing this idea of how we think about people who are incarcerated. Over 1 in 3 adult Americans has had an immediate family member who has spent time in prison or jail. So even if you haven't had someone in your life who's been incarcerated, you probably know someone who does have a loved one who's been incarcerated. It's really time to think about how we approach prison food, how we approach nourishing people who, even if they have caused harm, are still human beings and are still someone's loved ones.
The prison industrial complex is an extension of slavery. When you are incarcerated, you're told what to do, when to do it, you're told what to eat. So the things that they give you is food for slaves.
Clearly, prison food fails incarcerated people, their communities, and society at large. But there are a few possible interventions that could help, from improving food standards, to providing access to local produce and in-unit kitchenettes, to teaching life skills around gardening and nutrition. All of these solutions require political pressure, and pressure has to come from constituents. People who aren't incarcerated have to see the humanity and value in incarcerated people. They have to understand that the prison industrial complex is designed for profit, not rehabilitation. And until that happens, incarcerated people will continue to have their health and their dignity stripped away, meal by meal.